We're now just 6 days away from the first ministers' meeting that will take place right here in Ottawa. But ahead of that meeting, the BC Premier is already in the nation's capital along with members of his cabinet. Today, meeting with the Prime Minister, yes, talking about healthcare, but also other issues including housing. So to talk about all of that, we're now joined by BC's Housing Minister, Ravi Kahlon. Minister, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So as I say, a lot of issues to discuss as the members of your cabinet come together along with the Premier to meet with counterparts here in Ottawa. Let's begin with your portfolio, though, housing. And when I think about British Columbia as one that used to live in the Lower Mainland, affordability, of course, is such a huge issue. How is that issue figuring out in this visit?
Well, BC has always been a desirable place for people to live, and with that means we have large populations that come there, and we've always seen higher prices for homes, but also higher rents. But what we've seen coming out of the pandemic is a real skyrocket in those prices. And Premier Eby, coming in as a new premier, has made healthcare and housing his top priorities. And so the message we're bringing here to meet with our colleagues on the federal side is, we really want them to be stepping into in these fields in a bigger way, because through cooperation, we're going to be able to make more of an impact in our communities than if we are just, 5 hours apart.
So how do you envision that kind of work together between these two levels to address an issue like affordability?
Well, certainly on the housing side, it means we're going to need to build more. I mean, we have 2 decades of underinvestment in housing in British Columbia. We don't have the stock of affordable housing that we need to ensure that we can provide it for the people that need it. And we're seeing...
Are you talking about rental or ownership?
We're talking about rental and ownership, but more so on the rental side. We have some of the highest rental rates in the country right now, and we have a shortage of rental stock right now. And what it's doing is putting pressure on all of our society. And we're seeing now an increase in encampments, where people have good paying jobs, but they can't afford a place to live, and so they're finding themselves living in tents, which is heartbreaking and unacceptable, quite frankly. And so my message again to my federal counterpart is, let's get to the table, let's talk about matching dollars, let's build housing together so that we can address the pressures we're seeing in our system when it comes to supportive housing and complex care housing, but also build the rentals we need for our growing population.
And I'm also wondering about how federal policies affect jurisdictions like British Columbia, because of course I don't have to tell you, the federal government announcing the fact that they want to increase immigration to this country with a target of an annual intake of some 500,000 new Canadians by 2025. How does that affect what you're hoping to achieve when it comes to housing in the province?
Well, it's a big challenge for us, and we want immigration. We know we need it in British Columbia. Our natural population will start declining by 2030, so we welcome it. But it's not going to be successful if we don't support those that are already here and those that are coming with housing. It's not acceptable for people to come here and then find out that they have to live 7-8 people to 1-bedroom suites. It's just not acceptable. And so my message to the federal minister is, let's do it. Let's bring people in at those numbers. We need that, but let's do it with a thoughtful approach to address the critical issue, which is healthcare and housing. If we do those things well, we'll ensure that those people that are coming will be successful here in BC, but in Canada as well.
So you've had meetings today. Any indication that you're going to get the kind of partnership you're looking for?
Well, we've seen some positive steps when it comes to healthcare, and the Prime Minister has indicated that there'll be a proposal coming, and I know the Premier Eby will be here next week to have those discussions, so that's positive. On the housing side, there's an openness for a conversation. We'll have more conversations tomorrow, but again, I want to be hopeful. We've had a good working relationship with the federal government, but every good relationship needs once in a while for people to say we need more, and this is a situation. We're investing over $800 million a year in housing, and the federal government is roughly around $100 million, and so we need more of an investment in BC so we can achieve the goals we want together.
Now, you mentioned healthcare, and you talk about increased numbers, and that is what the provinces have been asking out of Ottawa, more money for healthcare. Any indication as to what we might see on Tuesday next week?
Well, we don't have an indication yet, and as Premier Eby highlighted, it's always good to know in advance of the conversation, but the fact that there's an understanding that we're going to be having the provinces at one table with the federal government is a positive step. The fact that there's a proposal coming is a positive step. I know Premier Horgan was advocating for this in a big way before he was done as Premier. And so to seeing this conversation, that's very important for us. And then, of course, the details will be important. And Premier Eby highlighted today for us, of course, core funding is critical, but we also want to figure out how we can support our seniors who are in long-term care, how we can recruit more nurses and doctors and train the professionals up. All these will be important pieces of the conversation.
Well, certainly the federal government has its own priorities. In giving out this money, it's looking for outcomes, not just a dollar as the provinces are asking for. They're looking for specific outcomes and data. You mentioned a couple of issues there. What are the other fronts, other issues where the provincial and the federal aspirations might come together in this healthcare accord?
Well, I would say mental health is a new piece. Our systems aren't built for the mental health supports that they need to be. And we've seen coming out of the pandemic, there's a greater awareness, a greater understanding of how important mental health is. And so what we need to do is ensure that, care for seniors, long-term care pieces are there. We need to make sure that the trained professionals that we need are being trained here and processes are being fast-tracked for them if they're coming internationally. And we need a greater emphasis on mental health. We've had, unfortunately, very high numbers of overdose deaths. And so that is a top-of-mind issue for us. And we're hoping that there's a core funding conversation, but there's also perhaps an opportunity for provinces to identify key issues that they want to address with the federal government along with that core funding.
Minister, really appreciate the time. Next time in Victoria.
I hope so. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you there.
Me too. Thank you for this.
Thank you.